Packet Tracer Activity 10.3.4. Connect a router to a LAN. In this activity, the routers are communicating amongst one another. The PCs are communicating to the switches, but the routers are not communicating to the switches because they haven't been configured to do so yet. So for this exercise, we're going to first look at the routers and how they're initially configured, and then we will configure them so that they can communicate amongst the different networks that are hanging off of them. So we'll go ahead and start with router 1. Go to the command line interface and go to part 1 here, and it said which command displays the statistics for all interfaces on the router. So let's think about this. So it has to be some sort of a show command, but we first have to do the password here. And the passwords for this are configured here. The console password is Cisco. You have to go to the enable command in order to do the show commands. And the word class is the enable password. So we need some sort of a show command. So let's look at the show command options here. Now we have a series of commands. We're trying to look at interfaces. Oh, there's one here called interfaces. So interface status and configuration. So let's go ahead and do show interfaces. And this is the one we want. This shows all of the detailed information about each of the interfaces that is connected to this router. So you can either press the space bar to move through the entire list, or you can just press the escape key and stop the list at that point. Now if we want to only look at a particular interface, serial 000, we needed to use a slightly different command. So if I go back to the show command here and look at this again, we have to decide what is the potential command here. Now this is a little bit misleading because we have to use a show interface command. And the show interface, you notice, does not show up in our list up here. So for some reason this likes to be a little bit confusing. So we want the show interface, and then we have to tell it the type of interface, in this case serial. And if I do another question mark, it'll say the interface number. And this will be 0/0/0. Now I can shorten this to just S, no space, 0/0/0. And this will do the same thing for me. Alright, so it wants us to then look at the statistics for this particular interface. So we want to know is what IP address is configured here for this particular, this particular interface. And the IP address is right there. It wants to know the bandwidth, and it's next to the BW here. And let's see. Now we want to look at the gigabit 00 interface. So I'll do the same thing. Show interface G0/0. And I want us to know what's the IP address here. And if you notice, we don't have an IP address here. If I go back up to this list, notice that underneath the hardware item, there is an IP address, but in here it doesn't exist. And this is because it has not been configured yet. The MAC address, we're able to find right there. And the bandwidth, once again, is here. Okay. Now we want to go ahead, and it says display a summary list. So a summary list is not with all the details that we show here. Let's see, did I miss one? No, I didn't. Sorry, I got myself a little bit turned around here. Okay, so we're doing the summary command here. So the summary command is a show, and then it's IP. And under IP, we have a series of commands, and there is interface. So this is a little different than the other ones that you'll have to remember. But if we do this one, and it's show IP interface brief, it gives a much shortened version. So it can be a little bit easier to see what we're looking at. Notice here that I expanded this window a little bit so that everything lines up nicely in a table. So if we look at this, it says how many serial interfaces. Pretty quick and easy to see. 2 serial interfaces. Ethernet interfaces, we have 2 gigabit Ethernet and 4 fast Ethernet connections. And the question says, are they all the same? No. Fast Ethernet and gigabit Ethernet are different technologies, up to 100 megabits a second here and up to 1,000 megabits a second here. So next we're going to do looking at the routing table. So we'll go back to the router, and then this is a show IP route command. So the routes currently available on this is a route to 209.165.200.224. That says it's directly connected. And then also a local connection. So the difference between these two, this one here, the local, is the exact IP address of this interface. You can tell this by the /32 at the end. This indicates there is only one IP address associated with this subnet. This other is the connected network that is connected to this interface. Notice this is still a fairly small amount of addresses associated with this network, but this is used in the connection between these two routers. And since we only have one connection, we don't need a lot of IP addresses to configure this. Now let's just go back to the questions here. So we did the route, and it asks how many connected routes are there, and there is one. And the route listed is 209.165.200.224 as we discussed. And then there's a question, how does a router handle packets destined for a network that it doesn't know about? Well, this is a problem. If it doesn't know about a network, it'll just drop the packets. It doesn't have a choice. It doesn't know what to do with those particular packets. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to do some configuration here. We're going to start with router 1. So we'll go ahead and get back over here, and I need to get to the configuration level. So I'll do a config T to get to the configuration level. And then we're going to configure gigabit Ethernet 00. So I type int for interface, G0/0. This takes us to the configuration of the interface level of our configuration commands. Here I need to set up the IP address for this. So we do this with the command IP. I'm going to do the question mark just so we can look at the things here. Address, as it says here, set the IP address. So I'll type address. Do question mark again. We could do this 2 different ways. We could either give it the address or use DHCP. We're not using DHCP, so I need to type in the address, which is 192.168.10.1. Then I'll do a question mark. Then it says it needs a subnet mask as well. So in this case, it's 255.255.255.0. Press enter. So at this point, I have given that interface a IP address, but the interface itself is still shut down. Routers, by default, have their interfaces shut down, so you have to turn them on. So to turn on the interface, I have to type the word no and then shut down. So this is the opposite of what you might think. So shut down means it is shut down. No means it is not shut down. So I'll press enter. And you'll notice that we get some information here. It says that the interface has changed to up and the protocol has changed to up. Next, we'll go ahead and put a description on this interface. These can be useful if you're in a device and you have multiple interfaces and you don't really know what they connect to. I can tell you it can be really important to have this information. The other information that network administrators will typically have are network maps that give them very detailed information about what connects to what and all the networking information that they need in order to configure things. So to do this, we're going to type description, and then we'll make this description of LAN connection to S1. Now I'm only going to do the description on this interface. I'm not going to do it on the others, just for sake of time. I'm going to go ahead now and configure the interfaces for the other routers and the other interface on this router. So I'm going to scroll back to the top up here. So I'm in the interface configuration level here. I don't have to step back out of this level to get to the next interface. I can just type int g0/1 here, and it will go into the next interface, even though it doesn't show you that here. This is something that you just have to keep track of, or you can do the back out and then come back into the interface. And I'll show that on router 2. So we'll go here. I'm going to do int. Oops, actually up here I typed the wrong interface. I wanted to go to int g/0/1. So we'll do here IP address 192.168.11 and the mask of 255.255.0. And then we'll do the no shutdown. All right, so that one's running. Let's go over to router 2 now. And you should notice over here, notice that the routes are starting to come up. So on router 2, I'll get back into the system and go to the configuration level. We'll do interface G0/0. That has an IP address of 10.1.1, 255.255.255.0. Let's see, I made a mistake here. 10.1.1.1 and then no shutdown. So as I said before, I could just do the exit command here to go back down to the configuration level, then go to the next interface. So going back through things, it might be easier to understand what you've done. So go ahead and give this its IP address. And turn it back up. Turn it on. Now to make sure I've done things right, let's see, I'm on router 2. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ping PC1 from the router. So I'm going to, because ping, if I do a show command here, show question mark, show, not show. Oh, it doesn't even know the show command at this level, even more interesting. So let me exit down one level and do a show. It doesn't know at this level. That's right. Show can't be used at the configuration level unless we do a do, as I said in a previous video. So we'll do a do show. Actually, what am I doing? I'm trying to do a ping. Let me back up. So to do a ping, I am just going to go back out of the configuration level and get down to our elevated command prompt. And here we'll see that there is a ping option. Where are you? Maybe you're at the non-elevated level. Now I got to get myself back in. Show question mark. You know, I think ping might just be a built-in command on these. I thought it was one of the show commands. So I'm just going to do ping 192.168.10. PC1 is 10. So it's going to go ahead and do its best. Notice it does the ping a little differently here. The dot here means that it failed, but then we had success. This is very similarly when we showed earlier that when you send the ARP requests across, it takes a little bit of time for the ARP to return with the information it needs before it can properly send the ICMP request. Alright, so let's go back down. We are at part 3, which is verify the configuration. So on router 2, let me get back to the enable level here. And I want to do a show IP int brief. So what we want to make sure that they are configured properly. What did I do here? So the Ethernet connections are running here. The serial connection that we're using is running. We actually have 2 other interfaces that are down at this point. So those are working. So we have 3 routes that are up. We can actually tell that as well by looking at the diagram here, but this diagram would not be available to you in normal use. Alright, so back to the verify. Next question here is what part of the interface configuration isn't shown here. So the IP address is shown here, but we put other information in other than the IP address. We put in the mask as well. So that mask is not shown here, but we could find out that IP address information, that mask information, by doing another command. So let's go ahead, get back here, and let's do a show interfaces command. So we have the gigabit Ethernet up here, we have the Ethernet address here, and let's see where we can find that. I was looking for the 255.255.255.0, and they're actually showing it here with the /24 notation instead. So this is one of the areas. There are more areas, but this is the one I would recommend using. Okay, next we're going to be looking at the routes. So let me go over here. I'm going to escape out of that, and then we'll do a show IP route command. And we're going to look at the routes here. So we have 1, 2, 3 connected routes is what we'd expect. We have 3 connections coming out of the router. How many OSPF routes do we have? We have 1, 2. Let me expand this out a little bit here so we can look at this a little bit better. So the 2 OSPF routes are showing the different networks, the 10.0 network and the 10.11 network. Those are the ones connected here. These are the ones that it can share with the other OSPF router or any other router that is connected to it using the OSPF protocol. Now, number 3 down here, it says, if a router knows the routes or all the routes in the network, the number of connected routes, in this case 3, and the OSPF routes 2, should total the number of LANs and WANs. So there are 5. 2 and 3 is 5. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 networks in this particular setup. So the routing is configured correctly. Now, if you don't have a total of 5 here, it says you've made a mistake in your configuration. So you'll need to go back and look at that. All right, the last piece here is just to ping across the network. I'm just going to do 1 ping. I'm not going to go through and test every configuration. I'm just going to ping from PC2 to PC3. So let me go to the command prompt here and let's ping 10.1.1.10. And we're going to get a timeout, but then we will get the appropriate ping response. Okay, this ends this video.